Marxist Maserati. That's what Jagmeet Singh has become. You see, his family owns a Maserati. It's in his wife's name. Yet Jagmeet Singh is getting caught up in semantics when reporters ask him, do you or do you not own a Maserati? Because conservatives are kind of going after you for the fact that you have really expensive things, such as a very expensive Rolex, very expensive suit, and also the biggest leech on taxpayers out of all the politicians. Last year, he spent more than $500,000 on business expenses. Kind of strange. And his answer is, I don't have a Maserati. But your wife does. It's in her name, but it's your Maserati. Kind of bizarre. So we're going to be taking a look at that later on in the video. We're also going to take a look at some things that Danielle Smith has to say about energy sector and just the whole tariffs situation with America and protecting the borders. And then also Pierre Poilievre. We're going to start things off with what Pierre Poilievre has to say when he's caught in Parliament by some reporters. And then we're going to end things off with some question period highlights. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do encourage y'all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Justin Trudeau has lost control of everything after 9 years. He's lost control of spending, lost control of the deficit, lost control of immigration and the border. And this has real consequences for real people. He's doubled the cost of housing, meaning that 80% of Canadians now believe that home ownership is only for the very rich. He's doubled the number of gun crimes with his catch and release criminal justice policy. He's doubled the number of people lined up at food banks with a carbon tax that on the farmer who produces the food and the trucker who ships the food, therefore all who buys the food. He has doubled the national debt, adding more debt than all prior prime ministers combined. And now he's completely lost control of our finances. Remember, his ministers said there would be a cap on the deficit of no more than $40 billion. $40 billion. And now we hear that the deficit has gone much further than that. Why won't the finance minister tell us the true number? What's she hiding? Is she hiding that Trudeau lost control of the deficit this year, just like every year? Yesterday, you all asked her if she would have a fall economic update. She wouldn't answer. The Prime Minister's office told you that there would be a fall update. So apparently these two don't speak. Or maybe they're fighting over how big and out of control the deficit actually is. Once again, such a fight would be a loss of control by the Prime Minister. And so we're today, common sense conservatives, are calling for the Finance Minister to introduce a fall update to indicate whether she's keeping her promise to cap the deficit at $40 billion or whether Trudeau's completely lost control of the deficit once again. Not only will we cooperate to let her introduce that fall update, we will actually give her a Christmas gift. We'll give her 2 hours out of our Conservative Opposition Motion Day on Monday for her to stand on her feet and tell us how much she's lost control of the nation's finances.
By the way, nobody has ever offered on Opposition Day, the opposition party, nobody has ever offered the sitting government the opposition time. Like Pierre Poilievre doing that, I mean, that's wild. Like that's some next level confidence, next level trolling. That's just phenomenal. So two things, right? If Freeland doesn't accept it, she looks like an absolute idiot. I mean, you should be using that time, especially if it's given to you by the opposition leader on Opposition Day, to provide the fall economic update. I mean, we're almost due for the winter one. We're almost due for the first quarter of 2025, for crying out loud. So if she doesn't accept it, she looks like an absolute idiot. If she does accept it, she still looks like an absolute idiot because she waited for Pierre to offer that to her. Now, maybe Pierre knows ahead of time that that's when she's planning on doing it, on Monday ahead of the vote of non-confidence. Maybe he knows insider information. I have no idea. But the fact that he's the first one to offer her that time slot, even if she was already scheduled to do that, I didn't know about it. You didn't know about it. Nobody knew about it. The first time we're hearing about it is Pierre making that offer. So she looks like an absolute idiot either way. Not to mention we're like couple of months past due on the fall economic update. Man, Pierre's good at his job. That's all I'll say.
Canadians need a common sense, Canada First plan to protect our economy, our system of immigration, our borders, to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. So, the challenge is over to Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. Stand on your feet. Monday at 4 p.m., we'll clear the deck so you can do it, and tell us how badly you've lost control of the nation's finances and the inflation and taxes Canadians pay as a result. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, he is good at making other politicians look like absolute idiots. And to be fair, it's not that hard, but the way he does it is so masterfully done. Justin Trudeau is not able to pull this off. Justin Trudeau's, attacks at Pierre is going after the fact that he doesn't have a security clearance, the MGTOW tags on his YouTube channel, like just stupid things, right? Not politics, but just stupid little things. He goes to he defaults to ad hominems, right? You've seen the Liberals attack Pierre. Maybe he should clean his glasses or get a new pair. Like stupid things like that. Like, okay, yeah, sure, little jabs, that's fine. But when it comes to actual politicking, man, Pierre is playing a whole other game. He's playing chess while these idiots are playing lawn bowling, right? It's just that big of a difference. But that's my opinion. I would love to know your guys' down in the chat. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about Pierre offering his time slot to Chrystia Freeland on opposition leader day? Is it good? Is it bad? Let me know your reasoning. Next up, we're going to take a look at what Danielle Smith has to say about the energy sector, about tariffs in America, and just kind of relations all around with America. Here we go.
I'm looking at the ISO website right now and data load requests. And we're talking about, they have 7 gigawatts of requests in the queue right now, and apparently more on the way. We're talking about a 50% increase in demand for power in the province. How can you avoid inflation, either in prices or in, commissioning or construction of this sector?
This is why when we talk about behind the fence, what we're meaning by that is if you want to get fast approval, bring your own power. The model that we're attempting to get the AI proponents to know is that they will be able to get faster approval if they have a partner who will build them the power as they need it, and hopefully overbuild so that we'd be able to get them connected to our power grid so that they can export to us. That's the model that worked in Fort McMurray, and that's the model that we think will work here. Because when we say that we are going to take an approach that protects Alberta consumers first, we are not going that we meant that. We know what the baseload need of Alberta consumers are on our coldest day. It's about 12,000 megawatts, and so anything that we have above that incrementally is going to have to be new power that we're adding in. And we should be aspirational about this. There's no reason why in our market why we can't continue to attract and grow our power base. We've seen that in other provinces. Quebec has always been a net exporter of electricity, as has Ontario, as has British Columbia, as has Manitoba. The fact that other provinces have produced surplus energy to their needs is something we should look at as inspiration here. We should have surplus energy to our needs, and that would allow for us to be able to make sure consumers are protected at the same time as be able to fuel the significant growth that's happening here. The other thing is, we have to look at the speed of scale up. One of the companies that I've spoken with recently who is contemplating a $2.5 billion investment in 256 megawatts when they're built out, they want to start with about 56 megawatts and then scale up over 10 years to get to the 256. So we have the ability to accommodate, I believe, a certain number of projects, knowing that more will come on stream as their power needs are accelerating. So I think that we are perfectly situated from a private power market point of view to have that joint investment happening at the same time. But the overriding principle that we have is that we've got to make sure that we protect prices for Alberta consumers, because that helps our entire market. One of the advantages that you can have in being able to provide a stable business climate is you've got predictable low power rates and predictable low heating rates. And that's the reason why when we put the strategy forward, we're asking for AI data centers to be looking at and bringing additional power to the market.
And now we're going to take a look at Jagmeet Singh, who's called a bit of a Maserati Marxist by reporters who are not very happy with him. Let's play the clip.
Some relief. Well, the Liberal relief is temporary, and the checks excluded seniors and people living with disabilities. And then we saw the true colors of Pierre Poilievre. It's turned out that he actually doesn't want any tax cuts for the middle class. He only wants a tax cut if it helps his billionaire buddies, because he voted against a GST holiday. So he is a fraud, not someone that wants to help out the working class. He's a billionaire bootlicker. That's who he is.
Oh.
So given the urgency of people getting help and our deep concern about the Liberals increasing taxes and saying they have checks to people that exclude those that are most vulnerable, we're going to be forcing a vote to expand the GST to cover monthly bills like your cell phone and internet bill, and to make sure that it's permanent. In addition, we want to expand the checks to include seniors, that's retired workers, and people living with disabilities. We need to see this relief that's permanent. We need to see it expanded. We need the working class to get some real supports, and that's why we'll be forcing this vote.
What a greasy piece of garbage. Calling other people bootlickers? Dude, he licked something, and I'll tell you, it ain't boots. Are you kidding me? It may start with a B. This guy is a grade A piece of crap.
Can I ask you, the Conservatives are criticizing you for driving a Maserati. Is that your car?
He laughs at
And
that.
what do you make of their criticism?
The Conservatives are silly. They do silly things all the time. They lie all the time. They don't care about the truth. They know that they're lying and they'll do it anyways. What I'm concerned is about people getting relief. What Pierre Poilievre is concerned about is playing games in the House. And one of the things that No, not at all. It's not mine at all. It's someone else's. So what has become very clear
Whose?
that the Conservatives would love to just lie about whatever, make up whatever, but the facts in front of people are, they cut or they voted against giving people a break. They voted against. I have nothing to do with it. I was not driving it. I have nothing to do with it. So they voted against.
Bro, what about your suit? What about your Rolex? Let me guess, those aren't yours either? What a piece of crap. He's trying to gaslight us in real time. He actually has a Maserati and he's lying about it. What the fuck is wrong with this guy?
Against a tax cut for the working class because they're billionaire bootleggers. That's who the Conservatives really are.
Are you open to negotiation on the checks? Does it have to be your version of the eligibility, or if the Liberals meet you halfway, is that good enough?
Well, we've laid out our concerns. The fact that someone earning $149,000 is going to get a check, you're telling me a senior couple, none of them are going to get any help at all, that is wrong. And so we pointed that out to the Liberals. I said very clearly, I'm not going to support a situation where seniors don't get a check, but someone earning $149,000 does. That is wrong. They need to fix it. But given the cost of living crisis we're in right now, the idea that the minister would get 2 free tickets, taxpayer-funded tickets, is concerning, and it shows a lack of judgment.
Speaking of politicians who say one thing and do another, you initially said your oppo motion was going to be on abortion, and now you've changed that. Why?
It's still a very important priority for us. We're going to make sure we continue to fight to expand access. Given the urgency we're up against, that there's a measure in place that's going to increase taxes in a couple of months, we want to put back our idea on the table that we need GST relief that's permanent. We need it to include monthly bills. And the checks have to be fixed. The checks have to include seniors and people living with disabilities. So that's urgent. Those checks need to get out to folks, and we want to make sure that it doesn't exclude the people that need it the most. Yeah, so we've raised that concern. I said it now as an example. The fact that someone earning $149,000 a year would get a check, but a senior would not, someone living with disabilities would not, is clearly wrong. So I'm leaving it to the Liberals. They created this idea. They should fix it, but I've set out it should not exclude the people that need it most. It should not exclude seniors. It should not exclude people living with disabilities. They can figure it out. They're the government. But it should not exclude the people that need it most.
Jagmeet Singh is I mean, he's just a piece of crap. He's a piece of crap. He's a disingenuous piece of garbage, lying about having a Maserati, saying it's not his. He doesn't have a Maserati. Yeah, you do. It's confirmed. You have a Maserati. You wear expensive Rolexes that are $20,000. Your suit costs more than a lot of people's cars. And you're just going to laugh at people, at reporters, when they're asking you the tough questions? Fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself, Jagmeet. You grade A piece of trash. That's why he's never going to be prime minister. Nobody's ever going to vote for this guy. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. Jagmeet Singh is just, it's not looking good for him. I mean, is this the end of Jagmeet Singh's career after the next election? Yeah. I don't want to say 100%, so I'll say 101% likely that he will not be the leader of the NDP after the next election. Now let's take a look at some of the most recent question period highlights.
Trudeau showed us who they really are. They voted against tax relief for the working class. And the Liberals want to jack up taxes on the 15th. New Democrats believe the working class needs permanent relief. So will the Prime Minister permanently exempt the GST off of daily essentials like a kid's winter jacket?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're actually moving forward to suspend the sales tax for Canadians so that they can afford the basic necessities that they will need, whether it's fresh-made produce whether it's fresh-made products at
produce. Bro, this guy can't even talk.
Whether it's dinner at a restaurant or even a fast food place for the family, these are things that Canadians will find less expensive over the coming months. Unfortunately, the Conservatives continue to vote against measures that will help Canadians. They stand against this tax break for all Canadians, like they stand against dental care, school food programs, and many other things to help Canadians.
The Prime Minister claims he's taking taxes off of fresh-made produce. He really does think that food comes from the grocery store. From the farmers who actually grow the produce. That's why he thinks he can carbon tax those farmers without taxing the food. And then you have his friend, the Maserati Marxist over there in the
Oh! Maserati Marxist.
You're both out of touch. Canadians are out of money. How about a carbon tax election?
Man. Pierre is just the master at this. Throw some W's in the chat for him. Holy smokes.
Colleagues, order. Order. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Speeder
had the opportunity to axe the sales tax for Canadians.
What's going on with him?
And he voted against it and forced his MPs to do exactly the same. He is only interested in his own political self-interest, not interested in helping Canadians, either with a tax break for the next few months, or with dental care for vulnerable seniors across the country, or with more school food programs that'll help kids and parents afford their groceries. These are the kinds of things we're doing. These are exactly the things that he is blocking.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister says he's going to leave the economy to bankers. He says he doesn't think much about monetary policy, the budgets balance themselves, and that he's not very good with numbers, but he did get one thing right. He said that deficits cause inflation. So did his finance minister right before she introduced his budget, saying no deficit above $40 billion. So, straight up question, will the Prime Minister keep his word and cap the inflationary deficit below $40 billion?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I know the Leader of the Opposition is eager for our fall economic statement. If he really wants to see it, he could perhaps...
Dude, the country's eager.
...obstruction of Parliament to allow us to move forward on dealing with Canadians and challenges that they are facing. But it's interesting that he brought up inflation once again. He stopped talking about inflation after years of railing about it because we did the work to actually bring it down, Mr. Speaker. We invested in programs that were there to support Canadians, but that didn't contribute to inflation. Inflation is now back down in the target range. Interest rates are coming down. That's why we can give a tax break to Canadians. That's why we're there.
I'm going to ask colleagues to please not take the floor unless recognized by the Speaker so that we can both hear and that people who do use translation can hear the answers to the questions.
Honorable chef de l'opposition. The results are in on the Prime Minister's radical liberalization of hard drugs. He teamed up with the BC NDP to decriminalize fentanyl, crack, and heroin. He lowered jail sentences for mass producers of deadly fentanyl. And 80% of the fentanyl made in Canada is done so using ingredients that are not even regulated, but come right into our country where they're cooked into that poison, now threatening our trade relationship with the U.S. Will he reverse his radical liberal drug agenda to save lives and jobs?
Please do what's best for Canada.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, we've seen that the Conservative leader's answer to this terrible tragedy hitting so many Canadians with the toxic drug epidemic is to stand for photo ops in front of encampments and try to use them for cheap votes. Exploiting Canadians is not the way.
He's educating people.
We've anchored ourselves in science, in working in partnership with municipalities, with frontline workers, with provinces, working with the United States on precursor chemicals, working to invest in supports, wraparound supports, including housing for people suffering from homelessness and the drug crisis. We will continue to be there for people.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The results are in. His radical liberalization of hard drugs has led to a 200% increase in overdose deaths. 47,000 people have died. The worst deaths have been in NDP-controlled BC, where the liberalization has been the most extreme. Worse, he's allowing 80% of the precursor chemicals used to make fentanyl come in unregulated and legally over our border to be used by criminals who get out because he softened the sentences. Now our trade relationship is threatened over it. Will he reverse this disastrous experiment to save the jobs and the lives of Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what has become increasingly clear to the Leader of the Opposition's little performances
There's something wrong with Trudeau today.
Care about Canadians and about people suffering. He is there for a clip, he's there for a photo op, but he's not there to do the work of delivering based on science, based on compassion, based on a public health approach on dealing with the toxic drug epidemic. He is instead continuing to try to score cheap political points on the backs of the most vulnerable. That's not serious. That's not responsible, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He almost called him Prime Minister.
Is allowing 80% of the chemicals used in fentanyl manufacturing to come in unregulated and legally. What is not responsible is decriminalizing crack, heroin, and fentanyl, and then after you see that it leads to a massive increase in deaths, then 2 weeks ago, he, the Bloc, and the NDP all voted in favor of a committee report to decriminalize fentanyl right across the country at a time when Canadians are dying and our border could be closed. Will the Prime Minister confirm that he has reversed himself and now opposes decriminalization of fentanyl?
Clean up the streets.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, we see the priority of the Leader of the Opposition is to exploit and use Canadians who are suffering to score cheap political points. Meanwhile, we do the serious work amongst parliamentarians across different orders of government with partners around the world to address this in a way that is grounded in science, not ideology, that works with frontline workers, makes investments in wraparound services, and puts everything forward to try and save lives as best we possibly can. That's what Canadians deserve, not the kind of cheap partisanship that this Leader of the Opposition continues to demonstrate every time he stands up in this House. It is absolutely irresponsible.
Give me a break.
The Prime Minister has lost the control of the cost of housing, which has doubled since he became Prime Minister. And just this week, the OECD published a report showing that Toronto and Vancouver are now the two most expensive housing markets in all of North America. Vancouver's housing is significantly more expensive than Seattle, even though Vancouverites make half as much money. Toronto's housing is more expensive than New York, even though New Yorkers make 50% more. Will the Prime Minister call a housing tax election so that we can bring it home?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader has been having a rough few weeks since he promised he would be shutting down housing projects across the country. Even his Conservative MPs have been going around behind his back complaining to the CBC that they can no longer advocate for their communities, complain that they're no longer allowed to stand up for their mayors who need investments in housing in their communities. He prefers to muzzle his MPs than allow them to be their voice in their communities. His commitment to cut billions of dollars of investments from housing will not help anyone, Mr. Speaker. That's why we're delivering for Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, we don't complain to the CBC, we complain about the CBC. I digress. The Prime Minister says
that was pretty good.
More money to local bureaucracies, they'll speed up home building. So he gave $500 million to Toronto City Hall. What happened? Home building slowed down by 40%. He gave Vancouver City Hall $115 million, and housing construction slowed down 15%. Gave $176 million to Ottawa City Hall, construction down 22%. When will he learn that what we need in this country is to build homes, not bureaucracy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, mayors across the country, including in Conservative-held ridings, are speaking out about the reckless cuts the Conservative leader is proposing to money that municipalities need to increase densification, to accelerate permitting, to move forward on home building faster and faster across this country. The Conservative leader is standing against what his own MPs are asking for when he's telling mayors across the country he's going to pull billions of dollars away of investments in housing that will respond to Canadians' needs to be able to grow the economy and live securely for the future.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
So he gives tax dollars to big city politicians, and then he gives tax dollars to CBC to interview those big city politicians to say that they like getting the money. Mr. Speaker, if giving more money to big city politicians were going to solve the problem, we'd have the most affordable housing in the world. After revenues for cities has grown twice as fast as inflation and population combined for 2 decades in a row. We don't need more money for bureaucracy and politicians. We need money in the pockets of home buyers and home builders. So why not my common sense plan to axe the sales tax, GST, and bring down housing costs by 50 grand?
It's a good start, that's for sure.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're seeing the clear pattern of the Conservative leader. He picks fights with journalists, he picks fights with mayors and city councils, he even picks fights with the Team Canada approach that is standing up for Canada's interests faced with real challenges from the incoming administration to our south. He is choosing to pick fights and divide Canadians at a time when we should be pulling together to solve the challenges of housing, solve the challenges brought in by the new American administration. These are moments for us to pull together. Unfortunately, that's something of which this Conservative leader seems incapable.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Hiking taxes, debt, and inflation to pay off politicians in exchange for press releases and photo ops will not solve the problem. What it has done is doubled housing costs and made Toronto and Vancouver the most expensive housing markets in North America, worse than New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and many other places with more people and money and much less land. So here's a choice. He's afraid of a carbon tax election. Why don't we have a different kind? Why don't we have a housing tax election where he proposes to give money to politicians?
Lots of options for you, Trudeau.
Put it in the pockets of home buyers.
Lots of options for you, Trudeau. Pick one.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if he really wanted to put money in the pockets of Canadians, he wouldn't have voted against the Canada Child Benefit. He wouldn't have voted against our initiatives to cut taxes for Canadians over the next 2 months. He wouldn't have voted against initiatives like the Canada Carbon Rebate that puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians Canadian families across the country as we fight climate change and reduce emissions. He continues to seek to divide and pick fights amongst Canadians, while we are offering solutions that both support Canadians now and build a stronger and more prosperous economy into the future. That's what we're going to keep doing, Mr. Speaker.
Nobody believes that. And that wraps up today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. It does really help with its growth. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.